2019, so we're fairly new. And our mission is to cultivate and explore the arts of South Asia and its diaspora and amplify the voices of South Asian artists. We're extremely grateful to all of you for joining us today, especially our artists from India. I did want to take a moment to just acknowledge what is happening there with the COVID situation. And Asad and I and the founders as well, we would like you to know that you're in our thoughts and prayers during this difficult time. If there's any resources you would like to share with us, we can share them on our platform here as well. And with that, I wanted to just introduce you guys to a little bit background about Diasporic Rhizome and how we kind of conceived the idea for it. Kind of really grew out of a need to connect with people when we were in lockdown, with us being such a new organization. We had to kind of perfect the online landscape, and we were able to tap into a whole new audience. And Asad and I were extremely curious about, well, how are South Asian artists working in this digital realm, and how are they cultivating their own audiences and bringing attention to social justice issues, and how can we bring them together on a platform where they can be in dialogue with each other. So we had a lot of very, very extremely amazing submissions, and I would say the jurors can tell you, was not easy, but the artists that we do have, our 21 artists, we are extremely proud to be able to represent you in your work. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Shireen and Afzal, who are the founders of SAI, to introduce themselves.
Well, good morning, and to all of you, and thank you, Aruj, for that great introduction. I think you said it very nicely. South Asia Institute is a very young organization, but us felt, both of Zal and I are collectors. You know, we've collected South Asian art for going way back since 1971. And South Asia Institute came as a result of us wanting to not only share the art on a larger scale, but then also to communicate and contribute both our history and our culture and heritage. I think we felt it was very important that we tell our own story, you know, and take charge of the narrative. And so here we are. I think it's really appropriate that a digital exhibition has a digital get together like this. And we want to thank all of you for taking the time and participating. And a big thank you to Asad and Aruj, who, you know, behind the scenes. And Aruj, actually, you know, you were being very humble. This was her idea. So thank you again, and thank you to all of you.
I'm Afzal, and I would like to share his opinion. It's been a wild ride, and we've a lot of mileage.
I have regular scotch too.
A lot of people have gone on to view the exhibit. And congratulations to everybody, and thank you very much for participation. We appreciate you very much, and hope we do projects together on some future dates also. Thank you.
Thank you, Shireen and Afzal. At this time, I'd like to introduce you all to our jurors. We have Brendan and Ambika with us here today. Faisal unfortunately could not make it. I'd like to start with Brendan, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, Brendan Fernandez here, living here and based in Chicago, so coming in from here in the Midwest. Just super grateful for all your work and your voices and the community that you create, and excited to be a deeper part of the Institute. I'm an artist that works between the intersections of dance and visual arts. I question identity through my African and South Asian identity. And it was really great to see all of your work and to get to know it better. So thank you.
Thank you.
Brendan, Ambika, if you'd like to introduce yourself now.
Hi, everyone. Really nice to get connected to you all on here. Thank you so much to the artists for your work, incredible work, and nice way to connect to some folks I haven't gotten a chance to connect to before, and reconnect with some folks that I've known for a bit. Thank you so much to Asad and Aruj for your work and organizing this. Yeah, it's been a real pleasure to be here. I'm really introduce myself. I'm an artist organizer, sometimes curator, based in New York. I'm currently in New Jersey this weekend, but thanks for having us in this gathering.
Thank you, Ambika. And before we move forward, I would like everyone to mute their mic until it is your turn to talk. I'd like to hand it over to Asad now, who will be facilitating your intros.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Asad Ali Jaffrey. I'm the executive director here at South Asia Institute, although I'm not here now, I'm at home. Thank you for giving us your time, your energy, both in the exhibition, agreeing to be part of the publication, as well as joining us today. I know that right now, with everything going on in the world, time and your energy are probably the most kind of important things you have to give. So we do really appreciate this, and we really appreciate the just great enthusiasm that everyone has had. I also have to say that because time is precious, we've asked everyone to limit their intros to 3 minutes. I will be the bad guy, unfortunately, and time it on my phone to make sure that everybody kind of gets their time to introduce themselves. I'll kind of quickly flash the work of yours that's part of the exhibition, just so people have a reference point, but we want to see all of you. It's just wonderful to see all the faces here. And then if we do this right, we should have at least like 15 minutes or so to be able to just have a conversation together at the end as well, and then talk a little bit about next steps. We're really excited about this publication and mailing it to all of you. We are recording. We did ask if that was okay with everyone, and no one said that they had an issue with it, but if you do, and you don't want us to do anything with this, just let us know. You can chat me. Also, please do send us your mailing addresses when you can over email, because we would love to send you those publications when they're ready in about a few weeks. So with that being said, I'm going to go in the order that I have here that Aruj has wonderfully arranged for us. And I will ask Anamika Singh to go first.
I don't think Anamika is here. I'm not seeing her name.
I think I'm next. I can go.
Yes.
Yes.
Sure. Please go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see some familiar faces and nice to see some new ones. My name is Jarrett Videra. I'm an artist, cultural producer, sometimes curator, sometimes writer, sometimes teacher. I'm an artist that makes things, but also likes to make things happen. And one of the themes that this work explores is an ongoing theme in my work, which is looking at images and visual culture as pharmacons. So both having embedded ideologies hidden within them, looking at what's hidden in plain sight, looking at colonial narratives, but also looking at ways to break images and put them back together to think through different potentialities. Yeah, I think I'm well under the 3 minutes, but I think that's a good introduction for me.
Great example, Jarrett. That was like a minute. That's awesome. Thank you so much. We're gonna move on now to a collaborative between Sabah Khan and Shaheen Ahmed, whichever one of you wants to go first.
Yeah, so mapping memory is part of transforming narratives online collaboration with myself, Sabah Khan in Lahore. I'm in the UK, and then there was Jaffrey in Bangladesh. And we were looking at stories of movement with the artists from these 3 regions. We looked at the archives within Lahore, Bangladesh, and the UK, and what was happening within these regions a few decades ago within the art scene, and trying to bring together some sort of consolidate a website and bring these artists to the forefront, and how this movement is not as happening as much. And so yeah, it's quite an interesting project. Do have a look. And Sabah, if you'd like to introduce yourself, and then I'll go.
So I'm in Lahore and Shaheen is in Birmingham. Other than my art practices, which are now becoming more collaborative, and they're collectives of women artists who go on the frontier of Indus River, and we look at dams and barrages that are stopping waters at the delta. So that's my current project. And Shaheen, do you want to talk about your artwork?
Yeah. So I work with maps. I love looking at different types of maps. I'm working with Japanese and archival historic maps, looking at various words and movement and sanctuary and suffering and what's happening within the earth. And currently the UK government is slicing some of the country down the middle to create HS2 train. And I'm looking at the infrastructure and the damage that it's doing to the conservation area, animals, habitat. And I'm creating a large scale installation for Crafts Council UK. I think that was 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. It's great to see the transnational collaboration. And I'm hoping that we can build community in this way as well, right? And even without us needing to facilitate, all of you are connected and connected well. Moving on to Amin Rahman. And Amin, if you can unmute, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
My work looks into the issues of aggressive globalization and post-colonialism. I use a range of artistic mediums, including neon, encaustic, and digital. The text installation, Other Histories, is a collaborative project with London, England-based writer, activist, and political commentator of international repute, Tariq Ali. Tariq Ali has been working on the issues of globalization and post-colonialism for over 40 years. This installation is about Iraq War, and I have used 3 texts in palimpsest technique as strategy to converse, contradict, complement, and superimpose the text layers. The first text is from Muzaffar Ali-Jaffrey's poem. The poet is disappointed about the foreign occupation of his land and humiliation he's facing. He hopes that the foreign occupation will end soon. The second text is from Rudyard Kipling's poem, If Any Question Why We Died, Tell Them Because Our Fathers Lied. In this poem, Kipling tells us how to deal with the different situations in life. The poet conveys his ideas about how to win the life and, after all, how to be a human being. The text is from Tariq Ali's novel, A Sultan in Palermo. Why do I tell you this? An ailing king attempts to unify the Christian and Muslim worlds of medieval Sicily. Even after Christians reconquered the island, the citizens were allowed to retain their Muslim culture. King Roger's Muslim advisor, Al-Idrisi, ancient costly word attempt to free us from the raging sandstorm of ignorance to Islam's diversive artistic, cultural, historical, significant, and political influence that after your victory will determine how long you will survive if you do not let the sovereign forces prevail. Thank you.
Asad, you're
Sorry,
muted.
I was muted. Thank you so much, Amin. That was great, right on time. And we're going to move on to Renluka Maharaj.
Hello, everyone. I'm so glad to meet everyone. I was curious, though, before I started speaking, if there were any other artists here from the Caribbean or Indo-Caribbean artists at all. No. So that's what I know. I woke up this morning thinking about that. It's really delightful to be part of this group and to be part of a community that I feel like growing up that I was excluded from for a really long time, being from the Indo-Caribbean side of things. And so, the work, I wanted to do this work, that being one of the catalysts, for it. This whole idea of finding yourself and finding your identity within certain communities. And so for me, when I moved I was born in Trinidad and Tobago. My grandparents came over as indentured laborers the only information I have so far is of my maternal grandparents who came over in the 1900s. And I'm pretty sure my paternal grandparents came over, I would say mid to late 1800s, though I don't have the proof of that yet. And so, hold on. Yeah, so for this piece, thanks for bringing it up. For this piece, I wanted to bridge the gap between, the women that have come before. And this is actually a photograph of my daughter. And to show that connection between the past and the present and how we're all connected, through this history, and how the legacies of the things that have happened through a history, what I think is a history of violence, right? From British occupation in India to taking us, and kind of like sending us throughout the globe, and how that continues generationally to impact us. And so that's why I wanted to put a picture of my daughter there, and to have an image of this indentured laborer from this photograph is a couple hundred years old. And I think this trauma, this generational trauma, I know it's the word that's thrown around, but it's real, and we feel it and we understand it. And I think as artists, what we're discussing today is this, and this trauma and how it continues to affect us. And what started it all for me was when I took a DNA test. I think it was in 2018. Because I was curious, what else could I be? Having being brought over, from India, like what else could I be? And it just came up 100% South Asian. And so that really surprised me. I was like, how could that possibly be? Like, what does that mean? To be 100% South Asian, and being denied that for most of my life. So that's what really continues to drive the work. And then, and then going into the archives in Trinidad and finding immigration passes for my maternal grandparents, and learning that my last name is Maharaj, supposedly, right? And out that my mother's parents were Singh, right? Like, I didn't know that. It makes sense. I mean, they're from the Punjab. They pulled a lot of Indians from that area, right? And sent them over. So now I'm very curious as to what that means, and so trying to find the information on my father's side now is critical, because, I was brought up thinking I was this person. And now with each research project that I do, I'm figuring out, oh, I'm this person as well, which is, to me, actually makes me happy, because it makes me more dynamic, and it gives me like a lot more places to, to actually create work from and have conversations about. So that's where I am. And it's an interesting unfurling journey.
Thank you so much, Renluca, for that powerful history, as well as connecting it to the personal. I want to encourage everyone to use the chat as well. I think Brendan is doing a good job of doing that and connecting back. I'm going to keep moving forward and go with Umber Majid next.
Hi, everyone. As you can tell, I'm not at home. So I'm calling in actually from the shed. So I have a meeting here, but I wanted to tune in and meet everyone. So my name is Umber Majid. I'm a visual artist based between Brooklyn, New York and Lahore, Pakistan. And my work is, my interdisciplinary visual practice explores South Asian urbanscapes and futures through a feminist lens. And so the project that I've been exploring, or I've showed through this exhibition, is called photocopy.net, which is part of a larger project called Trans Pakistan Zindabad. So I've also been very interested in looking at family archives. I've looked at my grandfather's analog photography as a hobby photographer based in Rawalpindi, Pakistan. But specifically for this project, I've been looking at my maternal uncle's failed tourism company called Trans Pakistan. It failed due to implications of the war on terror in the early 2000s. And so the questions I thought about were, what are the ways in which one can re-envision a kind of failed venture, and how can that be used in current circumstances? So this project is linked towards digitally revitalizing this company to analyze the gentrification process in a housing community on the outskirts of Lahore called Beria Town. And so it's a corrupt housing community. Sabah and like other Pakistani artists would know about it because like a lot of people have done work around it, but I'm mainly focusing on blurring the line between tourism, leisure, and accessibility, and using digital tools. So I derive a lot of my work around Ravi Sundaram's pirate modernity, and thinking through interpretations of a subaltern kind of network, and whether Trans Pakistan as a company can advocate and use subversive ways to kind of allow for an experience like that on site. So currently, due to COVID, those things can't really happen. And I've been working on this project for around 2 years. But this iteration is an interactive web experience, which is an accumulation of both like from the Trans Pakistan archives and a lot of the elements in the installation, in the web environment, are actually drawings that I've done. So the idea of the handmade translated into the digital is like a big part of the project. And because I keep referring to local artisans that are creating really interesting animal sculptures that are in the housing community. So in the first, in the lobby of the interactive experience, there's like a tracing of animals, and that's referring to kind of the residue of these animal sculptures. And a lot of it is in contrast to the monuments that are in Beria Town, where there are replicas of the Eiffel Tower, Sphinx. And so it's thinking about like these micro histories of specifically visions of South Asian diaspora doing a return migration to Pakistan in the early 2000s, and looking at like local histories and people who have been gentrified out. So it's like this tension between the two. And as South Asian diaspora, you know, South Asian diaspora as gentrifiers is like an important thing that I'm thinking about and critically analyzing through the project. But yeah, this is one iteration. I also have an animation, lecture performance, and hopefully I'm gonna have a solo show at 1708 Gallery in Richmond, Virginia in July. So there'll be another version of the project there.
Thank
I
you.
think I'm good. I hope I didn't go over 3 minutes.
That's okay. You're making up for other people's shorter ones. Thank you, Umber. I think if people haven't realized, we've got a number of interactive submissions that are just great, and Umber's is one of those examples. So if you haven't taken time on the website to go through it, please do. We're going to go next to Melissa Joseph.
Hi, everybody. I'm also not at home, so thanks for allowing me to join from the train. I'm really happy to be part of this exhibition and this community. It's been really nice. So just thank you for that space. In this particular project, I think in general, my work is about how bodies are able to move through space, but this particular project was about the idea of a pocket. Got some lights. About the pocket as a microcosm for other spaces that allow us to explore possession and privacy, property, and the policing of those spaces. So I think this project was made with brick as a 1-year project over the course of a residency there. And I was learning this media, but also asking a lot of questions. I think that's something that my work tends to do, is to ask more questions than necessarily have answers. And also as someone who grew up in America, separated from most of my South Asian family, except for my father, who passed away a few years ago. There's a search that I see among my colleagues and my peers that we're constantly searching our own archives for answers to some of these questions about where do we actually fit in spaces like this. So it's sort of a meditation on some of the questions I have about pockets through these objects that were made over the course of the last 10 years and then were activated in the video. So,
Thank you so much, Melissa.
Mm-hmm.
And next up, we are going to go to Vidya Giri.
Thank you. It's been pretty nice to hear about everyone's experiences and learning from such a diverse set of artists. So I've been really appreciative of putting this together. Like many others, I think I'm sort of in an in-between space of trying to produce art that relates to my past ancestors and also for future generations. So with my piece that I created for this is sort of like a digital version of expressing identity. So my piece is interactive and uses sort of the viewer and depicts sort of points in time and how they shift over time. So a lot of my art is interested in sort of shaping different parts of my background, which was moving to different places and living in different places, but also having a core part of being South Asian at the core of me as well through my parents. So I think it's been interesting to hear a lot about like the larger scale of things and thinking about a lot of that in the future and past and things like that. I think that's pretty much the base of what I've created and hope to create in the future. And that's pretty much what I have.
Thank you, Vidya. You know what? I probably should have said this in the beginning, but it would be nice to hear where people are in terms of what city you're in right now, just out of curiosity to see what the diaspora is looking like within the Rhizome.
Yeah, I'm based in Houston, Texas, so in the US. And additionally, I think someone asked, what are the materials of it? It looks like twine and thread. The interesting thing about the thing is it's all produced within the browser. So it's actually all just with code and lines on the screen on a digital canvas. So although it does kind of look like strings and threads, I think that's pretty interesting because I think it kind of does represent those sort of digital intangible strings that divide us and tie us together as well.
Thank you. Next up, we're going to go to Sofia Kareem.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm an architect, an artist, and an activist, and I'm based in London. I became an artist really late. I was an architect, I still am an architect for over 20 years, and I've only really been doing art for about 3 years, I'd say. My work focuses on human rights across Bangladesh and India, and I campaign for political prisoners, including, it started really with my uncle, the photographer Shahidul Alam, who was jailed by the government of Bangladesh in 2018. And I became a full-time activist then and organized a protest for him at Tate Modern Turbine Hall. And then in December 2019, the mass protests in India broke out against the anti-Muslim citizenship laws and everything else that was happening. And I began organizing a protest about that in solidarity with what was happening in India, again at Tate Modern Turbine Hall. And the form of protest art was the samosa packets that South Asia Institute, Chicago, that Diasporic Rhizome is showing. And so I invited artists, writers, and thinkers from not only India and Bangladesh, but across the world or from anywhere to contribute work which became the samosa packets. So that was going to happen on the 28th of March, 2020, but the museum shut just days before because of COVID. But by then it was already, the platform was going on Instagram. Turbine Bug, it was called, and that's a reference to Shaheen Bug protests that were happening in India. The Muslim women led, not only Muslim women, but Muslim women, largely Muslim women led protests in Delhi that were the epicenter of the resistance. So Turbine Bug has now continued on as a platform for political art from South Asia, and artists keep sending their work, and yeah, that's where it is.
Thank you so much, Sofia, for that inspiring work and sharing that with us. Next up, we're going to go to Mara Ahmed.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to meet you all, especially after engaging with your work through the exhibition. And thank you for the SAI team for making all of this happen and for organizing this gathering. I'm going to actually just read my intro. I hope that's okay, but it helps me stay on point. My name is Mara Ahmed. I am an interdisciplinary artist and independent documentary filmmaker. I was born in Lahore, raised in Brussels. I went to college in Karachi and Connecticut and have spent most of my adult life in the US, all of it on the East Coast. My document just disappeared.
Oh, that may be because I shared your picture. So let me stop that so you can keep reading.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I've spent most of my adult life in the US and all of it on the East Coast. I'm based on Long Island right now. Like many of us, this movement across cultures and continents has shaped me and informs both my art practice and community work. I am always trying to subvert borders and hierarchies and create some kind of interface between what is considered discordant or incompatible. Language is another big focus of my work, not only in the form of political writing and critique, but also efforts to decolonialize language and knowledge, and in terms of creating an alternative film language that's unapologetically feminine, unafraid to cross boundaries that stabilize disciplines, genres, the linearity of time and space, as well as expected film structures. Ideas of home, memory, and nostalgia are also constantly with me, especially since my work on my last film, A Thin Wall, which stitched oral histories together to tell the story of the 1947 partition. Being South Asian and belonging to the global South is a huge part of my identity. So colonialism and its many insidious remnants and regimes become a useful lens for me to understand the world. I am an activist and was deeply embedded in the Rochester community for 18 years. This is how I learned about abolition, the history of racism in this country, and how I became a part of the Palestine Solidarity movement. So, for example, I was one of the organizers of a Palestinian film festival in Rochester, the first of its kind, for 7 years. Currently, I'm editing a feature-length documentary called The Injured Body, which is inspired by Claudia Rankine's book, Citizen, an American Lyric. I interviewed 17 women of color for the film and used Frantz Fanon's ideas about the shallow breathing of the colonized or oppressed people to bring dance into the mix and turn it into another narrative strand. The film is slated to be released this year. I'm still editing it. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mara. We're looking forward to seeing your new work. And just riffing off something you said about language and being a little bit more literal with it, I'd like to go next to Shubhra and Rajiv Prakash.
Hi everyone. Thank you for having us as part of the Diasporic Rhizome. I'm here with Rajiv Prakash, who also happens to be my uncle. I actually am traditionally a theater artist and had been making theater in New York. And I decided to once I started writing plays, I felt that I wanted to move more and more into stories from where I grew up and stories from, that are mine, that are from my culture and upbringing. And this made me want to explore the story that is related to my uncle's work, which you see in front of you right now is the Anglo-Nagari keyboard. This Anglo-Nagari keyboard, I'm going to let him talk a little bit more about it, but essentially this shows, it's one of the first keyboards that was designed, which would allow Indian languages, and in this instance, it's Devanagari Hindi, to exist on a Latin-based keyboard, would essentially allow the typing of Indian languages on a computer. This is done by him, designed by him, as part of his software APS and the company Vsoft that he started as an entrepreneur. And because of multinationals coming in, this kind of work was gone because they started selling the same thing for free with Windows XP and stuff. So I actually have become a digital artist because this story about him becoming an entrepreneur, about him bringing his language to the digital sort of awakening of the world, I decided to create the digital exhibition, to also write a play and also do a documentary. This is a 3-part project. And for this, I moved to India in late 2018, and I've been working on this. We've done already another much more elaborate, display of all the work, but I'm really excited to be here, and I would let him talk about this a little bit more. Sorry, I'm experiencing a little bit of brain fog because I've just gotten over a very mild case of COVID. So if my sentences don't really make sense, I'm really sorry. But you can read about it and I can talk to you about it separately, but I want to honor the time. So I'll let him talk.
Hello.
Oh, we can hear you. I just have to, yeah. Oh, no, I can't now. Hello?
Yeah, you're fine now, Rajiv.
Shubhra told everything. Thank you very much for calling us for this gathering. I'm Rajiv Prakash, and I am basically artist, hardcore visual artist. I am calligrapher, and since 40 years, I am doing this work. I was a lettering artist in magazines, in press and publications. Then I joined this design course from Banaras Hindu University, then Bombay, IIT Bombay. I did masters, and there I specialized in digital typography. I learned there how to design typefaces because I was calligrapher, so I knew the soul of the letters of Indian languages. So after that, I designed many typefaces in many Indian languages like Hindi, Bangla, Marathi, Gujarati, and I designed Russian font also. I designed Zoroastrian font, and I enjoyed it very much. Then Shubhra said, "Uncle, let's do something." So she started collecting all the works, and now we are doing this exhibition and all. That's all.
Thank you so much, Rajiv and Shubhra. We've been talking a lot about family. We've been talking about intergenerational work. And I feel like this is manifesting right in front of us. So I'm really glad that this collaboration happened. And Shubhra, you were able to introduce us to Rajiv's work.
Yeah, I feel awesome that so many people have spoken about their own families and being inspired by their own relatives. And I think that we have to tell their stories. And if you stand up for them and if you take their struggle forward, that's I think honoring that. And so I feel really special being part of this group. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you
both.
Very much. Thank you. Next up, we're going to go to Mushtari Afroz.
Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. I don't know if there are any other dancer and choreographers in this group. I always find myself in a very awkward situation because especially with this digital work that I created, wherever I submitted, it was probably the only dance piece. And the first time it was premiered in Quebec at Concordia University, their ethnocultural art history research group. And one of the curators there told me that she was very surprised to see a dance submission. And before that, they thought that dance is something else. So dance was not part of art. So I was quite shocked by that. But anyway, it has made its way all over the globe by now. I'll just briefly say what my artistic practice is, and it will probably be quite different from the visual arts practices, because I always refer to where my training began and how it has deviated from it. So originally I'm from Bangladesh, but now I live in Toronto. My formative years in terms of education and artistic development have been outside of Bangladesh, although I maintain a very strong connection with the country because my family and my friends, they're all back home. And sometimes when I visit there, I actually find myself more Bengali than many of the Bangladeshis that I see now back home, to be very honest. In terms of my training has been primarily in North Indian classical dance form Kathak, but I also had previously a lot of Bengali folk dance training. Specifically in Kathak, I specialized in Lucknow style of Kathak, and I follow the lineage of Pandit Birju Maharaj. But in my current artistic practice, I would say from 2016, a shift has happened, and it didn't necessarily happen overnight. I knew for a long time that sticking to a purely classical dance form was not going to be for me. I respect the form and I have immense admiration for the gurus that I've learned from, but my thinking is not necessarily aligned with that classical line of thinking that seems to place a protective shield around it to separate itself from the surrounding. And it's always, relating itself to a superficial notion of divinity and harmonious world that I certainly don't live in. So I wanted to reflect my space and time, my experiential living in my artistic work, and not just follow what I have been told to follow. And I just want to point out that what we call classical dance is actually not classical. It's a result of the nationalist movement of modern India that took place around 1930s and 40s. So what we call classical dance forms, starting with Bharatanatyam is a modern vision of Indian dance. It's not really classical. I don't know how many of you are aware of that. But the classical dance forms, they're beautiful, but it's just always beautiful. You're always divine. And it also made the female dancing bodies asexual. So we are always supposed to be just divine, just speak to the gods. We are not supposed to respond to our space and time at all. And that's not the trap that I was going to fall into. So in my, since 2016, I established my own collective called Katakandi Dance Collective. And what we try to do is devise a movement vocabulary, especially for the aesthetic point of view, devise a movement vocabulary that based out of or emerged out of the South Asian movement aesthetics. So I'm not necessarily borrowing Western aesthetics into it. I'm very much focused around what is possible within the South Asian aesthetics. And also another point is my work also wants to problematize the Western gaze or the Western understanding of South Asian dancing bodies. So from an Orientalist point of view, which is a lot of would agree, it's a perverted view, and we are just exotic dancers on stage. That's how we are seen. So through my contemporary work, and when I say contemporary, it's a contemporary spin away from what is considered classical or traditional. So I'm very aware of who is watching and what they're watching. So to give you an example, I remember there was a solo work that I premiered in Toronto in 2019, and it was premiered in a contemporary dance festival. And there was an anonymous critic who wrote, oh, there was an Indian classical dance form presented. And when I showed that to my South Asian dancers, they said, oh, so when did you start doing contemporary work? So that brought me to a point, so where do I belong? Probably in a third space. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mushtari. It's really great to hear all of you reflect on your work in this way. We've read the statements, we've engaged with the work for almost 3 months now, but to hear you reflect on it this way, I think is really powerful. In that same regard, the next artist we're going to go to is Mithu Sen, who you'll see in the chat right now. And Mithu is doing something a little bit different and is going to be performing through her QR code. So if you have your phone, I would ask you to just pick it up. I think most Androids, iPhones, etc. can do this. Go to your camera and just scan the QR code that we're going to show on the screen. We're going to leave it up for 3 minutes for her time, and we can all engage with her work in that way directly. So we will start that now. Thank you to Mithu Sen for that. I think it's profound that you got us to have this kind of moment of audio silence with your work while still performing and having us engage. And I think this is attributed to your creative genius, even in a Zoom space like this. So thank you for having us experience your language. Next, I'm going to go to Hina Hasnan, Maryam Hina Hasnan, who I believe was having some technical difficulties. So I just want to make sure that they are on. Yes.
Hi.
Over to you.
Okay, it looks like that's resolved if everyone can hear me.
Yes,
we're good.
we can.
So funnily enough, I've just moved back to Korea, which is where I am currently after spending a few years studying and working in London. And my piece for this show was called Economy of Movement 2, and so I believe Asad is going to pull up a still of it. And it's a film work, but my practice has always been really material based, and I really enjoy it, sort of physical interventions, specifically to do with object histories and colonial history, specifically to textile, in relation to trade and empire. And so during lockdown, that very physical practice started morphing into and shape-shifting into this new space, which was a lot more digital. So the image that you're looking at is a still from the film, and I just thought I would use this opportunity to share how it came to be. And I would do a lot of painting with turmeric and saffron, and sort of creating these stains that represent different like maps and trade routes and migrations. And then eventually it ends up becoming this digital portal like space in a projection for an installation. And then it ends up being the most obvious Orientalist trope, which is the flying carpet. But also I really just wanted to say that I'm so grateful to be able to share this opportunity and have a conversation with everybody here, because there are so many similar concerns and curiosities that knit all our work together. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Next up, we are going to go to Asma Kazmi and Building the City of Exiles. Asma is not able to join us today. Unfortunately, she's the only person who had a conflict. So I'm going to share her work, and I'm just going to read her artist statement as a tribute to that work. So just a second. And there's a video, of course, that you can see on the Diasporic Rhizome website. First, a little bit about Asma. Asma Kazmi is a research-based artist who combines virtual and material objects to explore simultaneity, a tug of more than one time and place. Her work involves long-term engagement with cities, architecture, plants, animals, stones, and other matter to locate vestiges of relations forged by the legacies of colonialism and post-colonial contexts. Combining visual and textual detritus from Western and non-Western historical manuscripts, photographs, archival material, fragments of locations, and mixing them with her own fabulations, Kazmi tells intertwining stories about Islam, Muslim culture, complex trade routes, global flows of people and commodities, labor, colonial and indigenous knowledge systems, and interspecies entanglements. Kazmi was born in Quetta, a city in Pakistan near the border with Afghanistan. She works between the US, India, Pakistan, China, Europe, and the Middle East to create installations that are legible in various cultural contexts. If you see the work on the screen, this is Building the City of Exiles, and it reflects on the status of the sanctuary city of San Francisco, examining the material culture of its shelter and encampment structures, as well as construction sites. The stark excesses in infrastructure planning and building practices in San Francisco frame a drifting, marginalized community of immigrants, refugees, and exiles struggling to keep up with the periodically changing global city. The project draws on intersecting ideas to consider San Francisco's sanctuary city ordinance alongside haram, a concept in Islamic urban planning. In a haram, Contending parties are meant to peacefully settle conflict. There is a ban on bloodshed, animal slaughter, the uprooting of trees, and causing bodily harm to others is prohibited. Mecca, the holiest place in Islam, is a haram. Yet, with growing populations in Mecca and San Francisco, urban space seems beholden to the aspirations of builders and planners who erect skyscrapers at alarming rates and heights. Who and what is marginalized in this process? What is the toll on the environment? And as I said, this is a video that is on the Diasporic Rhizome website that hopefully everybody has seen by now. Next up, I'm going to give it over to After Party Collective.
Hi, Shanak, your mic is mute.
Hey, I'm so glad to be part of this gathering with you all.
Yeah, so both Shonak and I, we are primarily based in Delhi, but have been doing projects internationally. We both have an independent curatorial and an artistic practice. Yeah, but so we came together in around 2018, 2019, and we are primarily interested in party as a site for critical praxis. And I'm interested towards producing spaces which are affirmative for trans intersex, agender and other gender variant bodies. We are primarily invested in curatorial and artistic projects, and through those we are hoping to think about collectivity, agency, legality, and pleasure. So we kind of came together and one of the first things that we did was we threw a party which was called the Queer Futures Potluck Party. And that happened in New Delhi at the Goethe Institute. And it was in one way to sort of celebrate all the things that have happened towards the decriminalization of Section 377, which criminalized homosexuality and other so-called unnatural acts. But also at the same time to kind of realign the queer movement, that it is not about just homosexuality, and it's also important. And there was a problematic trans rights bill which was kind of passed at that time. So it was important for us to relook at that, what is happening to trans rights in the country, and that's something that we focus upon. From there, what the video that you see at SAI Chicago's project Diasporic Rhizome is called Some Dance to Remember and Some Dance to Forget, which also takes from a judgment, a prior judgment from 2013 called, which was the Nalsa judgment, which was asking for reservation and kind of still offering more forms of dignity to trans people than the one which was passed in 2019. So that we pick up that judgment as something which was more affirmative. And that's what you see. That's the excerpts that you see from the text in the video. But while the foreground also looks at intimacies across different kinds of intimacies, and yeah, so you can see that video actually. I think that would be better than me talking about it. But also, one of the other things is that we look at Article 21 also as something which is primarily used for all human rights cases across the world, like whoever has constitutions. It's also something that comes from the UN, and all other constitutions have Article 21. And that's also mentioned in the video. From that, we, as a curatorial project, we're also doing a publication which talks about consent of the governed, which is again, looking at the idea of race constitution through the subjectivity of kink. We are interested in some of these things, and I would give it over to Shauna to talk more.
So we're kind of juggling between these two, or actually trying in different ways, or boundaries between the artistic and curatorial kind of scopes that hold otherwise a kind of rigidity. Like Vidisha said, we're thinking about affirmative spaces and what are the modalities of space that can make it affirmative for people who identify with gender variance, or as we like to call it, gender deviance. and also very interested in certain ideas of gathering, especially in what kind of knowledges and ideas come out when gatherings happen between trans folks from different kinds of backgrounds, cultures, castes, abilities. Just maybe I'll mark 2 upcoming projects that might be interesting for you all to know about. One is a project coming up in Vienna at the Queer Feminist Festival Wien Woche in September, which imagines a scene of the party at the end of gender normativity with 3 young trans illustrators from India, South Africa, and the US. And the other one, which we're also very excited about, is a project coming up in November at Apex Art in New York. Those of you all who are in New York, around the US, I hope you all will join us. It's looking at sort of bringing together artists and researchers from the Global South who engage specifically with and through parties. And kind of looking at the history of the party as a space for trans liberation and where we have agency to actually think about our futures.
Thank you. I want to add something, which is that currently Shaunak is in residency at ISCP New York, and we are showing a project called the Trans Futures Archive, which also brings together works of trans people who are identified within the trans umbrella from across the world. So if anybody is New York, we would love to do a studio visit with you. We're there through June as well. And yeah.
Thank you so much, Vidisha and Shaunak, and for challenging social constructs with your work. Next up is Nitin Mukul.
Hey everyone. So the work that I've presented is a form called Durational Painting, which I had actually started working in this mode while I was living in India from 2005 to 2008. So right at the end of that time, I just kind of had this thought of using ice and frozen media to make a painting and then shoot it disintegrating outside, and kind of like trying to bring out the agency of the material itself and let the kind of environmental factors sort of have a role in the outcome of the work. And then as, you know, I kind of stuck with this process, you know, I just kept developing and teasing out different aspects of it. And the current work that you see here is from just before the pandemic in May. I was in residency at the Caldera Center in Central Oregon in the Cascade Mountains, and collaborated with a Native American dancer who was also in residency there. And we kind of developed this piece using the landscape, inspired by the landscape around, and actually collecting materials found just through field work that we did while we were there. So it actually uses lichens and refers to a volcanic lake which was in the vicinity.
Thank you, Nitin, for that. I'll also say, because you know you can go to the website and see everybody's work, but it would be nice if everyone shared their social media, emails, websites, etc., and we will share it with everybody as well, if that's okay with anyone. If you don't want anything shared, just let us know and we won't share. Next up, sorry. Okay, next up we will go with Abdullah Qureshi.
Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you to the fabulous team at SAIC for organizing this and gathering us all here. I'm really grateful to this opportunity. I'm originally from Pakistan, Lahore, and I'm based in Toronto, or Toronto, which is the ancestral and traditional homeland of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and Huron-Wendat. I work within my creative practice. I work as an artist, curator, educator, often engaging methodologies of collaboration and organization. By and large, I'm interested in personal histories as well, like many folks here. I look at traumatic pasts and sexuality. I've been doing my PhD at Aalto University in Finland over the last 3 years. And my dissertation is entitled Mythological Migrations, Imagining Queer Muslim Utopias, which includes the film I've shown in this exhibition. Essentially, I'm interested in the intersections of queerness and Islam and migration, and how that can be looked at or imagined through mythological frameworks. This particular video looks at cruising, anonymous sex, but also blurs the boundary between that and how sexual abuse happened, which is some of the stories that kind of unfold in the video through the interviews, which are deliberately left slightly ambiguous. But the larger question, I guess, this video also addresses is the question of queerness elsewhere and what elsewhere is, because for many of us who come from other spaces or exist in other spaces outside the quote unquote West, elsewhere is very much here and now. And so this is kind of a project that kind of grapples those kind of questions from a very personal point of view and interest. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abdullah, for that. And moving on to Indrani Ashey.
Hi, I'm Indrani Ash. The piece I showed is My Goddess Gave Birth to a Goddess. I'm an interdisciplinary artist creating necessary mythologies with performance, images, and text. When I'm talking about necessary mythologies, I'm from North Carolina and based in Germany, and I went to school in London. So I'm kind of imagining how it feels to be a brown person in the West, as in white supremacy is a mythology. People are indoctrinated. It's an ideology. So I'm trying to imagine counter mythologies to how I've been indoctrinated by my education. So in this film, I was kind of creating an imaginary person or a science fiction character and trying to inhabit this science fiction space at the same time as I inhabited like a Western canon space or an archival space, trying to take up space in what is Western or white imagery. So that's what I was creating then. This year, I've been kind of doing performance lectures and also going into nonfiction kind of spaces and family research. So I kind of go back and forth between past and future. But with this piece, I was just also seeing how you can just create an idea with an image. Like you can create an idea of the internet or something that's science fiction just with the image, or you can create an idea of celebrity or history with a black and white photograph. So that's what I was exploring in this piece.
Thank you so much, Indrani.
Thank you so much for having me.
Next up, we have Spandita Malik.
Hey everyone, I'm just very thankful for this special gathering that we have today. It's just such a good time to have this. I think it's been a couple of rough weeks for everyone with family back home. And yeah, my name is Spandita Malik, and I'm a visual artist from India. I work mostly in collaboration with women in India who are learning to embroider in self-help groups, and some of them are also learning to embroider in non-for-profit organizations for domestic abuse survivors. This particular work is from the series Nagari. It's called Sarfaraz. She is a woman I met with in Rajasthan, and I've been working with her back and forth for last 2 years. We made this work in 2020. I met with her and we sort of went through interviews and conversations about very different ideas of being a woman and what gendered violence means to us as a naturalized and very normalized concept. And at the end of all of it, I took a portrait of her in her house. I printed it on khadi, which is the regional fabric that is used in Rajasthan for most of their embroideries. I asked Sarfaraz to embroider her own portrait in whatever way she wanted to, without any restrictions or guidelines. She is such a creative person. I think she has actually gone in and, like, you know, painted on this portrait to like create emphasis on herself, and she's given herself like a bead bangle and, like, you know, fuzzy slippers, and she's created this like sort of curtain like effect, which just like completely transforms the image. And I love that she did all of that, but at the same time I just feel like this work was coming at a point where I was struggling with what kind of photography I wanted to do and what photography meant to me. I was struggling with knowing that actually the photography that I thought was like great was, you know, through a very colonized perspective, growing up, just looking at all of this works in photography in India that has been done, like, you know, these huge projects and showing poverty and, you know, creating a narrative around photography in India. And I don't know, it was something that I wanted to push forward and create a narrative in a way that we would share power in creating images, and we would share, you know, the power of representation. And it was also about storytelling, that it wasn't just my narrative, but hers as well. Just want to say thank you for this lovely gathering.
Thank you for being with us and sharing your work. And next we'll go to Tenzin Lama.
Hi everyone, this is Tenzin Lama. I'm a New York and Kathmandu-based curator, artist, and an art consultant. Executing plans contemplated in the mundane, catalyzed by the everyday long episodes of reliving historical fractures. My process basically involves sublimating, or at times deconstructing, themes I have encountered into different forms in various mediums. I'm traditionally a cultural and visual anthropologist. Bipolarity of dualisms are mapped in my works that span from collages, paintings, to video montages, because I constantly go from living tradition to city dwelling to the diaspora. And recently I've been playing with the idea of pareidolia for my new series of works called Self-Effaced. I gather materials through intensive research and work in a state of automatism, where these universal common experiences like gentrification, subversion of femininity, endangered living traditions become highlights of my storytelling to bring estrangement and absurdity present in our everyday lives to the forefront. Being exposed to anthropology for a decade or so, I decided to pick up on tools required while hitting the so-called fields, archiving, cataloging, oral history, leading to new media works. Though I was fascinated by both the ideas of documentary making, Kino Pravda, Cinema Verite, and fictoethnographies, working for an oral history archive and an indigenous film archive for a short span of time. This work in particular I'm showing is pure eruption, realizing what women from the region down south from my villages near Mount Kailash region are undergoing in this current day concoction of developing nation dynamics, confluence with orthodoxy. Recalling Batai's writings, I realized how the once protective customs of chopadi or menstruation hut and acknowledging tip or pollution have evolved into discriminatory customs. These unsurmountable questions that arises in phenomenological inquiries and the ingulf literatures interwove into this short film that I have shown at Diasporic Rhizome. The non-objective or free-flowing scenes of fluids were drawn from two quotes by Bataille. The figurative scenes involved begins with Bataille's cover design, where we see the face of Lady Magdalene reclining, taking her last mortal gasp. The burnt plastic's vivid image representing tumor seems like it is drawn from 1960s painting by Alberto Burri called Red Plastic from the Arte Povera movement. It was a sheer coincidence that I was drawing from these pre-existing compositions in my state of automatism. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to share an image from the video so that people can see and reflect on that. I just want to check also if Anamika was able to join us because they were supposed to be with us. No? So what I think I will do is just share their work and maybe read their statement as well, if that's okay. So this is Anamika Singh, who is an artist and designer based in New York, situated at the intersection of post-coloniality, abolitionism, military studies, and poetry. Singh's work analyzes the spatial and operational conditions of the carceral sites, contested martial histories, and their nationalist spatial ramifications to draw deeper links between these infrastructures and unravel our relationships with these shared histories. The questions at the heart of Singh's practice are how and why are particular histories of violence rendered familiar or abstract to us? How does the language of love also become the language of subjugation and death? Her work draws parallels, distinctions, and entanglements between the aesthetics that shape our desires and pleasures and those deployed in the interest of the necropolitical. This work, in particular, Landscape Without Bodies, the statement is, when Osama bin Laden's compound was found and demolished in 2012, a BBC article stated, no official reason for the demolition has been given. Residents around the compound have speculated that authorities do not want it turned into a shrine. A simple search for the compound will yield scale replicas in the US, China, and Afghanistan, and numerous models, both virtual and physical. The demolition of the original compound did not prevent its proliferation as a site, and the possibility of its memorialization and shrinehood. As sites are increasingly sanctified and weaponized through military violence, where do their replicas and speculative traces stand? As our landscapes are populated by military monuments, militarized urban infrastructure, and networks of surveillance, how are our personal and shared histories unfolding themselves with dense entanglements of violent legacies? What grows in the voids left by methodical demolitions, sightless shrines, and continually mutating and meditated memories? Landscape Without Bodies moves between historical, spatial, and speculative edifices that animate the specters of the American imagination. Meditating on the replicas of bin Laden's compound, it considers how nationalist and military episodes are synthesized into larger cultural infrastructures, wherein they are rendered intimate and obscure simultaneously. Examining transnational flows of violence, the film transverses temporal necropolises, graveless oceans, and hallucinating satellites. Landscape Without Bodies is part of a developing body of work that examines how witnessing functions as a truth-making and boundary-drawing practice through which events of violence are materialized. Furthermore, it inquires into how witnessing transcends the language of visibility. As part of Diasporic Rhizome, the film continues to ask, whose memory is this that I am remembering? Thank you to Anamika for sharing her work with us as well. I'd like to now open it up for the next 10 minutes or so to discussion. Again, thinking that this is the start of building community with everyone here. So feel free to jump in. If maybe Brendan or Ambika want to jump in at this point, please feel free to do that as well. And we'll just leave it open.
I guess it's really awesome to, like, during the jury process, we see the work, and it also, we weren't able to be together as a jury, but we did it virtually. But just to see the work in one iteration, but then to hear everyone's voices and ideas, it's just so inspiring and generative. I've been taking notes the whole time, and so I'm very grateful for the work that you guys do, because it also makes such an important mark for the South Asian community. And I think that this institution is really building on that, and so it's really nice to kind of start this process and see how it continues. So again, very grateful for to be part of this, but to also continue in the process.
Yeah, completely echo your words, Brendan. And thank you to all of the artists for your introducing yourselves and talking about your work today. It's always wonderful to hear directly from you, and so many right points of connection. And I was also taking notes and looking forward to finding ways in which this kind of community can continue to exist and grow through SAI Chicago's work. And thank you. So thank you again to the organizers. And yeah, I don't necessarily want to place pressure for discussion, deep discussion right now, because I think we could also use time to celebrate together and have open conversations. But yeah, looking forward to speaking with you all more in a more casual way.
Thank you, Brendan and Ambika. I also just wanted to take this opportunity to let everyone know that I am just deeply humbled to be able to share this space with you all, to be able to listen to your artistic practice and to learn more about your personal stories behind your work. I think it's so important, especially now more than ever, to create spaces for South Asians like this that give us room to tell our stories, to include everyone, and create solidarity in a way that we can begin to bridge some of the divisions that have kept us divided for far too long. You all are officially part of our SAI family. We want you to stay in touch with us. We want you to keep us updated about the work that you're doing. And we also want to invite you to Chicago. And if you're ever in the city, please come visit us. We would love to meet you in person. But yes, thank you for what you do, for everything that you guys do.
Yeah, seriously, I mean, I just have to echo what we were just saying. And like I said, please feel free to jump in, anyone. But I also just want to acknowledge that you all have been so generous with your time, so open and so collaborative. And that's just wonderful to see. Everyone has been responding really positively. And the exhibition has been getting some really great feedback as well. So this wouldn't have been possible without all of you trusting the process, putting into an open call, allowing us to exhibit your work, and then continue to do this, the gatherings, the publication. So I just want to acknowledge that artists don't have to be that generous, but you are generous in your time and your energy and your work. So thank you for that as well.
And I think Afzal and I also want to thank everybody and hope that we continue to stay in touch. It's, as you guys have just said, it's ended up being one big family, and we hope that it just continues to grow.
What brings home to me is listening to all the stories and the backgrounds and the ways you got into and ways you depicted your projects. It's amazing. Salute to all of you.
Hi, I just wanted to say it was really great to meet you all, and it's really great to be part of this family, and good luck with everything to all of you. Thanks. Thanks, Shireen.
Thanks to you.
Okay.
I also wanted to say thank you to everyone. I've had so many Zoom meetings this past year during this pandemic, and to see such amazing work and amazing brown faces. You know, it all in this one sitting for me has been really, really great. So thank you all for sharing.
I think Indrani wanted to say something as well.
I just wanted to say something. You guys were founded in 2019, or
yeah.
I remember a few years ago going to the Venice Biennale with my friends from school, from Goldsmiths. And so we're all from different diasporas. And we were really excited that there was this thing called the Diaspora Pavilion in Venice. And it seemed so appropriate for the moment because there's a lot of people in different diasporas that aren't really represented by their individual country or the country where their parents are from. And I went there and there were no South Asian artists, and the pavilion was sponsored by like British Arts Council. So Britain put their money into a diasporic pavilion and there were no South Asian artists. And I was just like, what's going to happen to me? Like, what is my future after art school? We have these institutions. There's no institutional support for people like us. So this is why I felt like the show was important, and that this new organization that you're creating is important. I used to be in New York and, you know, kind of look at Asia Society and Rubin Museum and try to find some contemporary South Asian artists, and it would just be hard to find them, hard to find someone who would show them. So we really need this institutional support.
Thank you.
And so thank you.
Yeah, thank you all for supporting the Institute.
Well, I don't want to keep anyone longer than we said we would, so I'm going to pass it back over to Aruj to kind of just close us, talk a little bit about next steps in terms of the publication, which we're equally excited about. Aruj, over to you.
Yeah, so as I said earlier, please email us your addresses. We want to make sure that we do get the publication to you once it's finished. We will also be archiving the show on our website at saichicago.org on the Diasporic Rhizome page there. And we'll also be adding any press that we've received around the exhibition on the page. So if you have an article that you would like to share with us where you've been mentioned, go ahead and email me the link to that and I can add it on there. If you have any specific instructions that you want us to include for the publication, also feel free to email us. But yeah, that's it.
Well, thank you everyone for joining. We hope you have a great weekend. Please stay connected. And I heard something about collaborations will come out of this. Please just keep us up to date as to what happens, what people work on. We're just excited to be a catalyst and a hub for this and a catalyst for change. So again, thank you so much for being with us and taking time on your Saturday.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.